Hi, I'm Sally. 3 days before my wedding, my future in-laws handed me a $6,500 bill for their party. Then said I owed them 2 extra dog walking shifts. And when the waiter called me, the owner, I finally saw it. This wasn't a marriage. It was a quiet transaction. And I'd just been itemized. But do you know what happens when the help starts keeping receipts? I pulled into their driveway exactly at 10:02 a.m. already rehearsing the polite smile I'd need to get through the brunch. It was supposed to be the final wedding planning meeting. One last round of, what can we squeeze into the budget before the big day? But the moment I stepped out of the car, something felt off. Not the weather. Texas spring had finally cooled down enough to breathe, but the air between us. Callum's mom, Trudy, opened the door with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. His dad offered a stiff nod, already retreating into the living room. The brunch table was set with their usual country club charm, white linen napkins, overpriced coffee beans, and too many forks. Everyone looked up when I entered. Everyone smiled, but none of them moved to hug me. Even Butterball, their old spaniel who usually bounded toward me, stayed curled in the corner like I was a stranger. Callum wasn't here yet. Again, I sat down, quietly adjusting the hem of my dress, trying not to take it personally. But my phone buzzed in my lap. Monroe, my sister. Her text was blunt as always. Don't let them dump anything else on you. Too late for that kind of optimism. Still, I smiled, nodded at their small talk, and reminded myself, this was just a meeting. In-laws are like mergers. Families don't blend, they negotiate. Or, worse, one side quietly takes over. Halfway through Trudy's rambling about napkin folds, she pulled out a beige envelope and slid it across the table toward me. Just a small thing to wrap up. Dear, she said with the same voice you'd use to offer someone a mint. I opened it. Inside was a typed invoice, neatly itemized, $6,500 labeled as family incidentals, tent rental, cousin's special dietary needs, extended hotel stays, all things I'd never discussed, agreed to, or planned. Everyone else kept eating like nothing happened. I looked up. Callum had just walked in. He saw the paper in my hand and froze for a second, then looked away. I asked, what is this? Trudy chuckled. Oh honey, it's just a breakdown of the little things we added. You can Venmo me, or a check is fine. A voice inside me tried to stay calm, tried to be the reasonable adult. But another voice, the one I usually kept quiet, whispered, this isn't support, it's a setup. I glanced at Callum again. He said nothing. I folded the paper slowly and slid it back toward Trudy. And then, as if on cue, she clapped her hands once. Oh, almost forgot. Butterball's schedule. She stood and handed me a folder. Inside, leash, dog food instructions, vet numbers, walking times. I'll be busy with the caterers all week. And he's used to 2 walks a day. You're young, flexible, and you don't mind a little fur, right? Callum scratched his neck. His father mumbled something about golf. No one looked at me. I nodded, once, picked up the leash. As we left, my heels sank into the soft Texas dirt. Butterball trailing behind me, blissfully unaware that he had just become another unspoken obligation. By evening, I needed space. I drove to a quiet bistro nearby. Nothing fancy, I just wanted to sit somewhere with cloth napkins and no expectations. But even that, apparently, was too much. The host blinked at the reservation. Oh, Borden? He glanced down. Under Trudy Borden. Are you, Mrs. Borden? I shook my head. Not yet. He smiled. Sorry, she said someone else would be covering the bill. That's you, right? The words hit me in the chest harder than I expected. I wasn't just invited, I was the wallet. The placeholder. The one who paid so no one else had to. Right, I said, sitting down. Even the waiter knew. I barely touched my food. Drove home in silence. Butterball snoring in the backseat like nothing in the world had changed. The credit card notification blinked on my phone. $324. Dinner for 6, charged in advance. I walked into my apartment, turned on the kitchen light, and stared at the wedding bill again. Then the leash. They both sat there like contracts I never signed. Was this a request? Or a test I failed by agreeing too easily? I whispered into the stillness of my kitchen. Whose name is really on this wedding? And if I thought that was the end of it, I was wrong. Trudy's text came in on Thursday afternoon. Short and sugary like a greeting card written by someone who's never said sorry in their life. Brunch this Sunday, a Borden tradition. Bring Butterball too. I stared at it for a few seconds, trying to decide if I was reading sarcasm into it, or if it was actually that passive-aggressive. Butterball, of course. The family dog was now part of family tradition, and I was still trying to figure out if I had a place at the table. I forwarded it to Monroe. Her reply came back before I could finish rereading the message. You're not going, are you? She's setting you up. Classic in-law maneuver. I didn't answer her right away. I knew Monroe was right, she usually was, but part of me still thought if I showed up. Stayed civil, smiled when it hurt, I might soften whatever it was Trudy had against me. Sometimes, you show up just to prove to yourself you can survive their company. So I went. The restaurant was one of those rustic-looking places with mismatched chairs and fake farm signs on the walls. Loud families, loud music, bottomless mimosas. I parked, grabbed Butterball's leash, and walked in 5 minutes early. The hostess glanced up, confused. Are you delivering the dog? Before I could answer, Trudy's voice rang out behind me. Oh no, she's with us. This is Sally, she's a keeper. Even handles the pooch. The words landed in front of the hostess like a gift wrapped in insult. I forced a smile, and the hostess just blinked, pointing toward the patio. Families out there. I walked through the restaurant, dodging trays and small children, Butterball trotting beside me. As I reached the table, no one stood, no one waved, they just looked. Trudy waved toward an empty chair like I was the help. Go ahead and tie Butterball to the rail. He likes the shade. I did as told, sat down. No one introduced me to the older couple beside Callum's uncle. Callum himself was late, again. When he finally showed, he kissed his mom on the cheek, muttered a, hey, to me, and reached for the bread basket. Not once did he correct the waiter when he referred to me as the dog walker. The first 20 minutes were a blur of small talk about golf tournaments, property taxes, and someone's new Range Rover. I smiled when expected, nodded politely, even laughed once or twice. But under the table, I kept checking my phone like it held a parachute. Then Trudy stood. She raised her glass, mimosa nearly overflowing. To family, she started. To tradition. To pulling your weight. Because real families are built on effort, not just invitation. A few people clinked their glasses. I didn't move. And to Sally, she added, eyes on me now. Who's proving she's willing to earn her place? Callum didn't react. His uncle Bryce, half drunk, snorted, marrying up ain't a bad gig. If you can keep up. I froze, my stomach clenched, not from the comment, but from the silence that followed. No one pushed back, no one said a word. Monroe, across the table, caught my eye. Her phone buzzed in my lap. You see it now, don't you? I didn't get the chance to reply. Trudy pulled out a folder from her purse. Before I forget, she said sweetly, I put together a few things to prepare for the future. She handed it across the table. I opened it, and stopped breathing for a second. It was a spreadsheet, color-coded, long-term care planning, Warren Borden, her aging father, columns of weekly tasks, medication schedules, appointment reminders, and there, in yellow, my name, every single care duty assigned to me. Without discussion, without consent. I looked up. They were still talking like nothing had happened. Callum was laughing at something his cousin said about a wine pairing. I folded the paper slowly, tucked it back into the folder. This wasn't brunch, I thought. It was a coronation, and I was the unpaid staff. I tried to speak once, twice, but Callum cut in both times with jokes and changed the subject. I texted my mom under the table. Is it normal to feel like a guest at your own future? Her reply, depends who's writing the guest list. I glanced at Trudy. She was watching me, sipping her drink with a smile so calm it felt like a dare. I didn't say another word. Just slipped the folder into my purse and waited out the rest of the meal. On the drive home, I pulled into a gas station to breathe. I opened the folder again, and a smaller piece of paper fluttered out from the back. It was handwritten, her cursive perfect. If you can't handle this, how will you handle marriage? I didn't scream, I didn't cry, but something inside me snapped, and it never quite healed. 3 days passed, not a word. Callum never brought up the brunch. Not the toast, not Uncle Bryce's jab, not the spreadsheet, especially not the note from Trudy. I didn't ask, I didn't poke, but the silence? It wasn't peace. It was a hum, a low, constant static in the background of everything we did. He made coffee like nothing had happened. Played with Butterball like he didn't hear the way his mother carved me up with a smile in front of half the town. And every evening, I watched him scroll through his phone while I cleaned up dinner. His silence growing more comfortable while mine got heavier. The spreadsheet sat in my purse for a day, then on the kitchen table. I didn't hide it, didn't push it on him either. Just left it there. Next morning, it was gone. I found it in the junk drawer wedged between expired coupons and an IKEA Allen wrench. He hadn't said a word. That's when I started writing things down. A little black journal, the kind you keep receipts in. I wasn't sure what I was documenting, just that I needed to mark these moments. The way he'd leave his dishes for me after I'd cooked. The way he'd call my concerns overthinking. The way he never asked how I was holding up. Even Butterball sensed it. The dog, who used to curl up near Callum's feet, now spent most evenings under the couch, ears low, eyes wide, like he'd wandered into the wrong home. Monroe stopped by that Thursday, swinging by with a smoothie and a look that told me she already knew I wasn't okay. She saw the spreadsheet on the counter and picked it up. "Are you kidding me?" she said, flipping through it. "This isn't caregiving, it's conscription." I laughed, but it felt forced. "Maybe they just don't know how to ask kindly," I offered. Monroe shot me a look. "Or maybe you've trained them not to need to." I didn't argue, couldn't, because something about that stung more than I expected. Later that night, after she left, I sat alone with a glass of wine. The spreadsheet spread out in front of me again. That's when it hit. This wasn't the first time. 2 years ago, corporate retreat, back when I worked events at my old job. I was volunteered to coordinate the entire weekend. Why? Because I was so organized. Because I'd make it look effortless. And I did. I handled every booking, every allergy menu, every printed name tag. When the VP spilled red wine on the conference table, I was the one scrubbing it at midnight. No thanks, no bonus, just tired smiles and a "you're amazing" that disappeared by Monday. Looking at the spreadsheet now, it felt the same. Different faces, same message. You're not chosen because you're capable. You're chosen because you won't say no. I leaned back in my chair, that same bitter fatigue settling in. It wasn't just Trudy, it was Callum, it was my old boss. It was the waitress who assumed I walked dogs for a living. People didn't mistake me, they counted on my silence. I went to the kitchen to start dinner, grabbed Callum's laptop to pull up a recipe I'd bookmarked, and something flashed in the corner of the screen. Unread email. I don't snoop, I never have, but the subject line, it was too familiar. Final invoice, wedding costs, Sally's share. I clicked. It was an itemized bill. $6,500. Venue, decor, favors, a second dog handler, all listed, all marked, paid by Borden family. And in bold letters, to be reimbursed by Sally A. No one told me. Not Trudy, not Callum. They didn't ask, they just assumed. The brunch wasn't a welcome. It was a ledger. I sat down, lights off, invoice in hand. My eyes traced the numbers again and again until they blurred. Even the marriage had been itemized. An hour passed before Callum came home. He tossed his keys in the bowl by the door, shrugged off his jacket, and walked into the kitchen like we were still playing house. "What's for dinner?" he asked casually. Not looking up, I folded the invoice, placed it neatly beside my wine glass, and met his eyes. "I think it's time we talk about ownership." The apartment was quiet, that kind of silence where even the refrigerator hum feels like it's watching you. I had just poured a cup of tea when my phone rang. Trudy. I let it vibrate twice before picking up. "Hi, sweetheart." Her voice came through syrupy sweet, but I could already feel the hook beneath the honey. "Just calling to check in." Sunday was, maybe a bit too blunt. You know how families are. We mean well, but sometimes it comes out sideways. I didn't say anything. I let her keep going. "Anyway, now that we're all square on the bill, I just wanted to confirm Butterball's walking schedule for this week. Oh, and we've added 2 extra shifts. Hope that's all right." That was it. The apology. It wasn't regret. It was repackaging, like smoothing a bow over a box of bricks. I took a breath, slow and deliberate. "I'll need to look at my own commitments first," I said, as calmly as I could manage. There was a beat of silence on her end. Not long, just long enough to register her surprise. She wasn't expecting that, not from me. Then she laughed, light and clipped. "Of course, dear, just let us know." Click. No goodbye, no, thank you. I sat there for a minute, staring at the wall like it might blink first. Later that night, I brought it up with Callum. He was chopping vegetables like we were in some magazine spread about domestic bliss. I handed him the printout of the invoice I'd found on his laptop. He barely glanced at it. "It's just a formality, my mom's way of staying organized," he said, like that made it okay. I didn't blink. "You mean staying in control?" I asked. He paused, knife in midair. "That's not fair, isn't it?" His jaw tightened. He set the knife down with more force than necessary. "You're blowing this out of proportion right before the wedding." I folded my arms, not angry, just done. "I'm not blowing it up. I'm naming it. There's a difference." He didn't say much after that. The next day, I drove across town to Monroe's. I needed perspective and blunt honesty. She gave both like water. I laid everything out, the invoice, the itemized charges, even the emergency tux press I never knew about. She read in silence, then leaned back on her couch, arms crossed. If your name's on this and you didn't consent to any of it, it's not a contribution, it's a setup. I stared at my hands. Maybe they just thought I'd be okay with it. She looked me dead in the eyes. Or maybe you've trained them to think you'll take it. Without question, without noise. I swallowed that, hard. Then she stood, pulled out a whiteboard, and handed me a marker. Let's rehearse. You don't walk into a manipulation fight with a scream. You bring a flashlight, make them explain themselves, in their own words. So we role-played. She played Trudy, I played me, sort of. By the time I left, I wasn't sure if I was angry anymore. I was something else, focused. That evening, I was making tea again when my email pinged. The subject line caught my eye instantly, Sally's contributions, final confirmation. It had been forwarded from an anonymous address. Inside, a group thread between Trudy, Felice, and Callum, dated 2 weeks before the brunch. Trudy wrote, "Let's not mention it to her until post-honeymoon. No need to start a fuss when we're so close." They had planned it. No one slipped. No one misunderstood. This wasn't thoughtless. It was deliberate. A slow burn started somewhere in my ribs and climbed up to my throat. They weren't just using me. They were coordinating it. I sat there for a long time, rereading every word. Then I opened the invoice email. Hit reply all. Typed slow. Each word measured. Thank you for the breakdown. Before I confirm anything further, I'll be arranging a discussion with all parties, in writing. I hovered over the send button. Let the moment stretch. Then I clicked. It was nearly 9. I had made peace with the quiet that night. Just me and a glass of wine. Hoping for nothing more than to stay out of anyone's crosshairs for one damn evening. Butterball was curled at my feet, twitching in his sleep. I had finally gotten used to the silence, until my phone lit up. Group chat. Final arrangements. I stared at it. Trudy, Belle, Callum. I didn't want to open it. Not really, but of course I did. Messages scrolled in, fast and passive-aggressive. Let's finalize the duty schedule. We swapped Monday and Thursday for Alvina. Add in backup options if she can't handle the afternoon shift. I set the phone down on the armrest like it had burned me. A few seconds later, Monroe called. I picked up fast, needing her voice to tether me back. You okay? She asked. Define okay. You sound tight. I'm fine, I said, lying badly. It's just, in-laws are like weather, right? You pack an umbrella, still get struck by lightning. She exhaled. Want me to come over? I shook my head, though she couldn't see it. No, I need to sit in this one. After we hung up, I paced the room, phone still in hand. Butterball followed, his eyes cautious like he sensed I was fraying. I opened the group chat again, read everything twice, and then typed, "Please confirm who authorized these extra charges before I approve anything." The dots danced. Belle replied first. Why so hostile? We're just trying to make this smooth. Maybe don't overreact before the honeymoon. I almost laughed. It was so predictable it hurt. Trudy chimed in next. We only meant to help make things perfect. You've been under so much pressure, we thought we'd take something off your plate. Funny, they always took things off my plate by putting more on it. Callum? Nothing. Silence, like always. I looked up from the phone and caught my reflection in the dark window. I didn't look angry. I looked stripped, like the wind had been knocked out of me. But I was still standing. Later that night, I heard a ping. Belle had sent a document. Final wedding speech, group draft. I opened it. My hands shook. I remembered the version she had sent me a week ago. Sweet, polite, borderline boring. This was something else. Lines like, Alvina, though she lacked some traditional grounding, brings her own charm. And, we've all stepped in where needed. To help bridge her gaps. I opened both versions side by side. The edits weren't subtle. They were surgical, designed to reshape me right in front of a room full of strangers. I saved both files, labeled them, original, received, and, revised, distributed. The wine in my hand tasted like metal now. Then the phone rang again. Callum. I almost didn't answer, but I did. He started in soft. I wanted to talk before anything else gets weird. I didn't speak. He cleared his throat. About the spreadsheet. I knew it was unfair. I thought you'd bend. I felt something in me still. I didn't stop them because I thought you would. He said. He meant it as confession. But it sounded like confirmation. Not cruelty. Worse. Assumption. I hung up without saying goodbye. No tears, just this new thing rising in me. Quiet and strong. Later, I opened my laptop, pulled up both speeches, pulled up the invoice spreadsheet, arranged the windows side by side. The screen lit up my face in the dark. I stared at my reflection in the glass. Then whispered out loud, "Let's see who's narrating my wedding." It was past midnight and I hadn't slept a second. The bedroom was quiet, too quiet. Butterball circled once, then again, eventually settling at the edge of the bed like he didn't want to disturb my storm. But I was already disturbed. The invoice, the edited speech, the emails they hadn't meant for me to see. All of it looped in my head like a bad movie I couldn't shut off. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my name in black and white, attached to things I hadn't approved, hadn't agreed to, hadn't even been told about. I turned on my laptop, not sure if I was looking for answers or just a place to aim my anger. I opened the spreadsheet. I opened the first draft of the speech, then the revised one. I lined them up side by side, compared tone, language, subtext. There it was, proof of who they thought I was, and more importantly, who they wanted others to believe I was. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just sat there, calm, calculating. If I wasn't going to be quiet anymore, I had to be precise, not loud, strategic. I started gathering files, folder after folder, screenshots, document versions, email headers. I gave each file a name that made sense to me, not just for reference, but as armor. This wasn't just wedding prep anymore. It was evidence collection. Around 6 a.m., when the sky outside turned from black to gray, I got up to make coffee. That's when I saw it. A manila envelope, no label, no name, just sitting there, half slid under my door like someone didn't want to be seen leaving it. I opened it with a strange mix of suspicion and hope. Inside was a scan of the original wedding contract, with my handwriting all over it. Margin notes, suggested edits, budget splits, guest count, meal selections, my handwriting, my edits, signed by me, dated 4 months ago. I had forgotten I'd even drafted this. Because they'd buried it, they'd replaced it with their version, their narrative, their rules. My chest tightened, not from hurt, from recognition. I hadn't just been excluded. I'd been erased. It was never a negotiation. It was theft. They'd taken my outline, gutted it, and presented it back to me as a favor. As if I were lucky to be included in something I had helped build. I folded the papers and placed them in the folder. My hands didn't shake. My spine was straight. Around mid-morning, Monroe texted me a screenshot. No greeting, just the image. A comment thread on a wedding forum. Anonymous post. Hope Mrs. Borden's ready for duty. Some brides have no backbone, it's all carry. No contribute. I didn't have to guess who posted it. Then came the replies. Family shouldn't have to micromanage if she were truly invested. Not everyone's cut out for commitment. Some of us saw it from the start. Monroe followed up with one line. They're laying down narrative. You better get ahead of it. My stomach dropped, not because of the smear, but because I knew she was right. They weren't just manipulating me anymore. They were manipulating the outside world. Friends, extended family, maybe even vendors. And Callum? Still silent, like always. I sat with it for a few minutes, then opened my laptop again. I drafted a post, not for the whole internet, just a private wedding planning group most of our mutuals followed. Title: Behind the scenes of our wedding budget. I didn't blow up everything. I wasn't reckless. I posted a few line items, a few invoice details, just enough to raise eyebrows, not alarms. I didn't name names, didn't accuse, just facts. Clean, simple, undeniable. Monroe called just as I was staring at the post button. Go easy, she said. Reveal the tip of the iceberg. Let them flinch. I paused. There's always that voice, the one that says you'll look dramatic. That people will say you're difficult, ungrateful, that bride. But then I thought, if I don't define the story, they will, and they've already started. I hit post. Notifications popped up almost instantly. Likes, comments, DMs, a ripple through the pond. Then the group chat buzzed. Trudy, we need to talk. Now.